Hello and welcome. My name is Alan and we are back with more. Greek mythology. Today we're getting into a new chapter. So, yeah. Four Great Adventures is the name of the chapter. So it'll be likely four stories. But let's go ahead and jump into this. Phaethon. This is one of Ovid's great stories, vividly told, details used not for mere decoration, but to enlighten the effect, to heighten the effect. The Palace of the Sun was a radiant place. It shone with gold and gleamed with ivory and sparkled with jewels. Everything without and within flashed and glowed and glittered. It was always high noon there. Shadowy twilight never dimmed the brightness. Darkness and night were unknown. Few among mortals could have long endured that unchanging brilliancy of light, but few had ever found their way thither. Nevertheless, one day a youth, mortal on his mother's side, dared to approach. Often he had to pause and clear his dazzled eyes, but the errand which had brought him was so urgent that his purpose held fast, and he pressed on up to the palace through the brandished doors and into the throne room, where, surrounded by blazing splendor, the sun god sat. There the lad was forced to halt. He could bear no more. Nothing escapes the eyes of the sun. He saw the boy instantly and looked at him very kindly. "What brought you here?" he asked. "I have come," the other answered boldly, "to find out if you are my father or not. My mother said you were, but the boys at school laugh when I tell them I am your son. They will not believe me. I told my mother, and she said I had better go and ask you." Smiling, the sun took off his crown of burning light so that the lad could look at him without distress. "Come here, Phaethon," he said. "You are my son. Clymene told you the truth. I expect you will not doubt my word too. But I will give you a proof. Ask anything you want of me and you shall have it. I call the Styx to be witness to my promise, the river of the oath of the gods." No doubt Phaethon had often watched the sun riding through the heavens and had told himself with a feeling half awe, half excitement, "It is my father up there." And then he would wonder what it would be like to be in that chariot, guiding the steeds along that dizzy course, giving light to the world. Now, at his father's words, this wild dream had become possible. Instantly he cried, "I choose to take your place, father. That is the only thing I want. Just for a day, a single day, let me have your car to drive." The son realized his own folly. Why had he taken that fatal oath and bound himself to give into anything that happened to enter the boy's rash young head? "Dear lad," he said, "this is the only thing I would have refused you. I know I cannot refuse. I have sworn by the Styx. I must yield if you persist. But I do not believe you will. Listen while I tell you what this is you won't. You are Clymene's son as well as mine. You are mortal, and no mortal could drive my chariot. Indeed, no god except myself can do that. The ruler of the gods cannot. Consider the road. It rises up from the sea so steeply that the horses can hardly climb it, fresh though they are in the early morning. In mid-heaven it is so high that even I do not like to look down. Worst of all is the descent, so precipitous that the sea gods waiting to receive the horses, to receive me, wonder how I can avoid falling headlong. I guide the horses too in their fiery spirits. To guide the horses too is a perpetual struggle. Their fiery spirits grow hotter as they climb, and they scarcely suffer my control. What would they do with you? Are you fancying that there are all sorts of wonders up there? Cities of the gods full of beautiful things? Nothing of the kind. You will have no past beasts, fierce beasts of prey, and they are all that you will see. The bull, the lion, the scorpion, the great crab, each will try to harm you. Be persuaded. Look around you. See all the goods the rich world holds. Choose from them your heart's desire, and it shall be yours. If what you want is to be proved, my son, my fears for you are proof enough that I am your father." But none of all this wise talk meant anything to the boy. A glorious prospect opened before him. He saw himself proudly standing in that wondrous car, his hands triumphantly guiding those steeds which Jove himself could not master. He did not give a thought to the dangers his father detailed. He felt not a quiver of fear, not a doubt of his own power. At last the son gave up trying to dissuade him. It is hopeless, as he saw. Besides, there was no time. The moment for starting was at hand. Already the gates of the east glowed purple, and dawn had opened her courts full of rosy light. The stars were leaving the sky. Even the lingering morning star was dim. There was need for haste, but all was ready. The seasons, the gatekeepers of Olympus, stood waiting to fling the doors wide. The horses had been bridled and yoked to the car. Proudly and joyously, Phaeton mounted it, and they were off. He had made his choice. Whatever came of it could not change now. Not that he wanted to end that first exhilarating rushed through the air, so swift that the east wind was outstripped and left far behind. The horse's flying feet went through the low bank clouds near the ocean as though a thin sea mist, and then up and up in the clear air, climbing the height of the heaven. For a few ecstatic moments, Phaethon felt himself the lord of the sky, but suddenly there was a change. The chariot was swinging wildly to and fro. The pace was faster. He had lost control. Not he, but the horses were directing the course. The light weight of the car, those feeble hands clutching the reins, had told them their own driver was not there. They were the masters then. No one else could command them. They left the road and rushed where they chose. Up, down, to the right, to the left. They nearly wrecked the chariot against the scorpion. They brought up short and almost ran into the crab. By this time, the poor charioteer was half fainting with terror, and he let the reins fall. That was the signal for still more mad and reckless running. The horses soared up to the very top of the sky, and then plunging headlong down, they set the world on fire. The highest mountains were the first to burn. Ida and Helicon, where the muses dwell. Parnassus and heaven-piercing Olympus. Down their slopes the flame ran to the low-lying valleys and the dark forest lands, until all things everywhere were ablaze. The springs turned into steam, the rivers shrank. It is said that it was then the Nile fled and hid his head, which still is hidden. In the car, Phaethon, hardly keeping his place there, was wrapped in thick smoke and heat, as if from a fiery furnace. He wanted nothing except to have this torment and terror ended. He would have welcomed death. Mother Earth, too, could bear no more. She uttered a great cry which reached up to the gods. Looking down from Olympus, they saw that they must act quickly if the world was to be saved. Jove seized the thunderbolt and hurled it at the rash, repentant driver. It struck him dead, shattered the chariot, and made the maddened horses rush down into the sea. Phaethon, all on fire, fell from the car through the air to the earth. The mysterious river Eridanus, which no mortal eyes have ever seen, received him and put out the flames and cooled the body. The Naiads, in pity for him, so bold and so young to die, buried him and carved upon the tomb, "Here Phaethon lies, who drove the sun god's car. Greatly he failed, but he had greatly dared." His sisters, the Helios, the daughters of Helios, the sun, came to his grave to mourn for him. There they were, turned into poplar trees on the bank of Eridanus, where sorrowing they weep into the stream forever. And each tear, as it falls, shines in the water a glistening drop of amber. Pegasus and Bellerophon. Two of the episodes in this story are taken from the earliest poets. Hesiod is the 8th or 9th century tales about the Chimera, and Antaea's love and the sad end of Bellerophon are in the Iliad. The rest of the story is told first and best by Pindar in the first half of the 5th century. In Ephyre, the city later called Corinth, Glaucus was king. He was the son of Sisyphus, who in Hades must forever try to roll a stone uphill because he had betrayed a secret of Zeus. Glaucus, too, drew down on himself the displeasure of heaven. He was a great horseman and fed his horses human flesh to make them fierce in battle. Such monstrous deeds always angered the gods, and they served him as he had served others. He was thrown from his chariot, and his horses tore him to pieces and devoured him. In the city, a bold and beautiful young man named Bellerophon was generally held to be his son. It is rumored, however, that Bellerophon had a mightier father, Poseidon himself, the ruler of the sea, and the youth's surpassing gifts of spirit and body made this account of his birth seem likely. Moreover, his mother, Eurynome, although a mortal, had been taught by Athena until in wit and wisdom she was the peer of the gods. It was only to be expected on all scores that Bellerophon should seem less mortal than divine. Great adventures would call to such a one as he, and no peril would ever hold him back. And yet the deed for which he is best known needed no courage at all, no effort even. Indeed, it proved that what man would swear cannot be done must not be hoped for. The great power on high can give into his hand in easy mastery. More than anything on earth, Bellerophon wanted Pegasus, a marvelous horse which had sprung from the Gorgon's blood when Perseus killed her. He was a winged steed, unwearying of flight, sweeping through the air, swift as a gale of wind. Wonders attended him, the spring beloved of poets. Hippocrene on Helicon, the Muses' mountain, had sprung up where his hoof had struck the earth. Who could catch and tame such a creature? Bellerophon suffered from hopeless longing. A wise seer of Ephyre, Corinth, Polyidus, to whom he told his desperate desire, advised him to go to Athena's temple and sleep there. The gods often spoke to men in their dreams. So Bellerophon went to the holy place, and when he was lying deep in slumber beside the altar, he seemed to see a goddess standing before him with some golden thing in her hand. She said to him, "Asleep? Nay, wake. Here is what will charm the steed you covet." He sprang to his feet, No goddess was there, but a marvelous object lay in front of him, a bridle all of gold, such as never had been seen before. Hopeful at last with it in his hand, he hurried out to the fields to find Pegasus. He caught sight of him drinking from the far famed spring of Corinth, Pyrene, and he drew gently near. The horse looked at him tranquilly, neither startled nor afraid, and suffered himself to be bridled without the least trouble. Athena's charm had worked. Bellerophon was master of the glorious creature. In his full suit of bronze armor, he leaped upon the back and put him through his paces, the horse seeming to delight in this sport as much as he himself. Now he was lord of the air, flying wherever he would, envied of all. As matters turned out, Pegasus was not only a joy, but a help in time of need as well, for hard trials lay before Bellerophon. In some way, we are not told how, except that it was purely through accident, he killed his brother, and he went to Argos, where the king Proteus purified him. There his trials began, and his great deeds as well. Antea, the wife of Proteus, fell in love with him. And when he turned from her and would have nothing to do with her, in her bitter anger she told her husband that his guest had wronged her and must die. Enraged though he was, Proteus would not kill him. Bellerophon had eaten at his table. He could not bring himself to use violence against him. However, he made a plan which seemed certain to have the same result. He asked the youth to take a letter to the king of Lycia in Asia, and Bellerophon easily agreed. Long journeys meant nothing to him on Pegasus' back. The Lycian king received him with antique hospitality and entertained him splendidly for 9 days before he asked to see the letter. Then he read that Proteus wanted the young man killed. He did not care to do so for the same reason that had made Proteus unwilling. Zeus's well-known hostility to those who broke the bond between host and guest. There could be no objection, however, to sending the stranger on an adventure, him and his winged horse. So he asked him to go and slay the Chimera, feeling quite assured that he would never come back. The Chimera was held to be unconquerable. She was a most singular portent, a lion in front, a serpent behind, and a goat in between. A fearful creature, great and swift of foot and strong, whose breath was flame unquenchable. But for Bellerophon, riding Pegasus, there was no need to come anywhere near the flaming monster. He soared up over her and shot her with his arrows at no risk to himself. Then he went back to Proteus. The latter had to think out other ways of disposing him. He got him to go on an expedition against the Selimi, mighty warriors, and then when Bellerophon had succeeded in conquering these, on another against the Amazons, where he did equally well. Finally, Proteus has won by his courage and his good fortune too. he became friends with him and gave him his daughter to marry. He lived happily thus for a long time. Then he made the gods angry. His eager ambition, along with his great success, led him to think thoughts so great, too great for man, the thing of all others the gods objected to. He tried to ride Pegasus up to Olympus. He believed he could take his place there with the immortals. The horse was wiser. He would not try the flight and threw his rider. Thereafter, Bellerophon, hated of the gods, wandered alone, devouring his own soul and avoiding the paths of men until he died. Pegasus found shelter in the heavenly stalls of Olympus, where the steeds of Zeus were cared for. Of them all, he was foremost, as was proved by the extraordinary fact that poets report that when Zeus wished to use his thunderbolt, it was Pegasus who brought the thunder and lightning to him. So yeah, we'll end this episode there. There's the first two pieces of the four great adventures. Yeah, you have the son of the god of the sun, Helios. His son shows up at Helios's home and makes a request to fly the chariot at least for one day, and it ends up being his last day. For Zeus saw no other way to stop the madness the horses were caught in than to kill the driver, allowing them to go back into the sea. So Zeus kills the son of Helios. And some of his sisters, one of the sea nymphs, or a group of the sea nymphs, ended up turning into trees out of sorrow for their past brother. And then the other story, we have Pegasus ends up being pretty much owned by Bellerophon. Who rides the horse and finishes all these great acts. But he becomes very vain and figures, let's go to Olympus, home of the gods. So Bellerophon tries to get Pegasus to go up, and Pegasus says, no, I can't take you up there. And so he kicks off his rider, Bellerophon, at last. And so he feels such shame that he hides from other people and everything for the remainder of his life, while Pegasus is now welcomed in the stables of Olympus. And is especially looked fondly upon by Zeus, because it is Pegasus who brings Zeus his thunder and lightning when he's in need to use it. So yeah. But yeah, we get two good tales. Next episode we'll be reading Otis and Ephialtes and the story of Daedalus. I'm trying to see if this is the same one. No, this is before he and his son escaped the maze of the Minotaur. So yeah. And that'll get us into part 3, the great heroes before the Trojan War. So yeah, we're getting into some of the big parts of Greek mythology. Perseus, which is of course the famous the adventure where he goes and kills Medusa and everything. Theseus. Yeah, we're getting into some of the big name adventures now. Hercules. Probably the 12 labors. Because that's one of the biggest adventures we know of Hercules. It covers quite a bit of Hercules' life in general, but yeah. And we get to see all the great moments that made Hercules into one of the biggest Greek legends. Ooh. And yeah, Atalanta. She was actually on the quest for the Golden Fleece, although we don't get much information about her on that quest. But on her own, yeah, she's also interesting because her athleticism makes her the equal to any man. And so she never saw herself capable of being conquered by another man. Part 4, the heroes of the Trojan War. So yeah, basically the Iliad. The fall of Troy. Opening the door Odyssey. Yeah, the adventures of Odysseus as he tries to make his way back home from the Trojan War. You know, other rulers and kings and stuff have already made their way back, and he's spent so much time at sea trying to make his way back. His wife had feared he had passed away. So yeah, we get the adventures of Aeneas, the house of Atreus, the royal house of Thebes. Yeah, we're getting into more of the bigger stories and stuff. The royal house of Athens and the stories that surround it. Midas and Others, which is part 6, the less important myths. Yeah. Like I said, this book doesn't have every myth, but it gives you a good combination of myths in Greek history. So you still will learn quite a bit from it. I'm glad I ended up purchasing this book. Part 7, The Mythology of the Norsemen. Remember, back in the Prose Edda, one of the things we talk about is the Norse see themselves in some of their stories descended from the heroes of Troy in the Trojan War. So, yeah. And we get a few more Norse stories. But yeah, that's what's left in the book. Like I said, we're 40% of the way through. We're almost halfway. 390, page 391. Out of 465, so 191 out of 465. So like I said, we're about 40, maybe 45%. But yeah, we're getting through the book. But anyway, this video's gone far enough. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.